The Match Ball.
Hello there, welcome to The Match Ball, brought to you in association with Levi Solicitors, who will, of course, offer you a 10% discount on your legal fees. levisolicitors.co.uk/the square ball. Over 600 houses they've sold, Michael Normanton, in
That's
the time
impressive.
since we've been running this promotion.
Well, that makes it sound like since we've started saying...
Sorry, we've sold them 600 houses.
Yeah.
They've done more than that. Ours are the important ones, though, the good ones.
The best ones.
levisolicitors.co.uk/the square ball for full details to avail yourself of that. Rob's here as well, and I don't know about you, how many notes have you made during that?
I've managed about a side.
It's not one side of A4?
Yeah,
I've got a few of just not a lot happening. But
Yeah. In terms of overall outcome there, and we need to be very, very careful of not going all Billy Davis on this, but that's about as good as I think. We could have, if we'd been more ambitious, perhaps nicked it. But in terms of what you want out of a first leg, it just essentially leaves it all to play for.
Mm-hmm. And it felt like a decent contrast from the Southampton and QPR games where we've just had to watch teams like strolling through the middle of us.
I was going to say, as much as
that was tightish.
As much as the bigger picture of the playoffs, it's also the bigger picture of just a bit of a reset from conceding a load of goals and looking very porous and open. Just be solid. It's fine. You have to do that sometimes. You got to dig in. That's cool.
A defence that lacked porosity. Indeed. Not my fault you're ignorant, is it? And you didn't know that word on the show with Phil.
I did think you'd.
And Phil calls himself a journalist.
I think you were surprised to find it was a real word as well, to be honest.
No.
But it was just a game of no chances, wasn't it? There was the Sargent header, which was kind of under pressure.
He's rubbish, isn't he? So it didn't matter.
Well, you've done it now. He might be out the second leg. That'll be interesting to see as well, because that does remove a lot of attacking threat.
Weirdo DMing me on Twitter saying, "Oh, an American's going to end you off." I don't care. If he scores, or if another Norwich player scores, I don't know, Jeremy Goss, I will care exactly the same amount.
Jeremy Goss, back to the 90s for our frame of reference again. But yeah, it was fairly cagey first leg fodder, that wasn't it? I think, given what I think we all feared coming into that game, I think that's a decent platform on which to build for the second leg. There's absolutely, by the way, no counting any chickens or canaries for that matter for the second leg. But what we've done is we've arrested that awful bloody defensive collapse that we appear to have had in recent weeks.
Yeah, I'm just pleased we can look like vaguely functional from a defensive point of view, even if going forward it was still not particularly good. Nothing. Ruth had a very strange day, didn't he? From that air shot early on to just some mad bits of control
just
and
bouncing off him all over the place, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was not good at all, and Somerville had probably his quietest game for a while, I'd say.
Yeah, they started to grow into it a little bit in the second half, didn't they? I mean, I was surprised at half time when it showed we had more possession, because I suppose there was that chunk at the start of the game where it was kind of them just winning a load of set pieces, but we defended them well, and that's part of the game, is that you do just have to dig in sometimes. And once we got out of that, we started to get on the ball a bit more. But obviously the selection of three central midfielders, there was a bit less of a threat, but it was fine.
Yeah, although weirdly not much less of a threat, because we've not carried a great deal after the last couple of games anyway. So I thought Gray in midfield did seem to help. Just that he plays, I was saying when we were watching it, he seems to play across the full width of the pitch, does Gray, whereas when you get Pirro in that position, he's very, very central, which just means he's kind of easier to play around, because you just know you can essentially just defend the middle bit and he'll be there.
Shout out to Bay Area Brandon, who's in the comments. We're live on YouTube for our TSB Plus members, by the way. You've got your Leeds United Bay Area t-shirt on, Michael. Yeah.
It's a good shirt. Any other freebies people want to send me?
Just completely transparent now.
I do like the shirt. It's a good shirt.
It is nice, yes. Right, so let's rewind and go back to the team selection, because it's quite a ballsy move, wasn't it, really, to say the thing we've done for 46 games, well, nearly 50 games of cup ties, that stops now, and we're doing something else because we don't want to lose that game. What did you make of it when you heard the team news?
I was quite relieved. I thought it's needed something changing. I didn't see this necessarily coming, I have to say. I thought maybe he'd make other changes before this, but when I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll see how that goes.
It's something people have been asking for, certainly like online, and I think we've mentioned it in here before, having an extra central midfielder in there, albeit it wasn't massively different in that Gray was a number 10. I thought it might be 4-3-3, but Gray did play further forward, and he just runs loads, doesn't he? Like his engine's brilliant, which again you certainly don't get from Pirro when he's there.
Yeah, and he gives options as well. He's when he gets in defensive areas, he's quite tidy as Gray. There was a bit where he kind of ran back to intercept a ball, and then he brings it. It was the one where he did a little 1-2 actually, and then he sort of knackered it when he came to him having a shot. But he can get involved in the deeper lying stuff, whereas Pirro doesn't particularly do that. So, I thought midfield was functional if lacking threat.
Yeah, we sacrificed attacking threat, didn't we, for the purpose of the shape, but not necessarily a bad thing. And it's mad, isn't it, that if we can do the job on Thursday, I wouldn't be entirely surprised to see us do a similar thing to that if we were to get to the final.
Yeah, particularly if it was Southampton.
Yeah,
given the way they played against us the other day. But yeah, certainly no counting of chickens. But a draw is fine.
And also, I liked with that team that we picked. Say we are chasing a goal, he doesn't just have to throw all the strikers on. He can actually keep the formation and just make changes, personnel changes, which are kind of more offensive as it is. Whereas, like towards the end of the season, we've just been throwing all the strikers on, and it kind of just loses its shape, and it doesn't really work.
Started to look a bit desperate, didn't it, at times? The old the Hail Mary stuff. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, in terms of how the game started, Norwich applied a bit of pressure early on. By the sounds of it, I was messaging back and forth a little bit with Phil before the game, and we'll speak to him like after the weekend. And Phil was just sort of saying the Norwich crowd were up for it. Leeds have to start well. And I think the important thing in that early phase of play was probably that we didn't start conceding chances and look really, really stretched. Do you know what I mean? It was we did sort of have to absorb a fair bit early doors. I don't think they put us under huge pressure. And as the game actually went on, they sort of ran out of steam in that regard, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm just looking at my notes. There was not a lot. The first real talking point was that we should have had a penalty.
Right. Yeah.
Which I thought it at first glance. I thought it on every replay they showed. I was like, yes, that's definitely a penalty.
It was definitely a foul, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then he gets round. There's kind of two fouls. There's one on the edge, then he gets past him, and then he fouls him again as he goes round him. So, and it's definitely on the line, stroke in the box. So, just have a penalty. And it's given some of the soft shit he did give in that game. Yeah. There's any other part of the pitch and at any other stage of the game, he's probably given that. But because it was the first 5 minutes and it was a penalty, you got the feeling he just went, ooh.
The Sky pundits mentioned that at half time as well in the box. They were saying it was probably too early for him to give it, which is stupid as well.
Yeah.
It felt like if he wanted to bottle it, though, he could have just given us a free kick. But to not give anything was really weird, especially when the line-out was that side as well. It's like,
well, you can only conclude then, presumably, he thought that Nonto was trying to buy it. He did seem to sort of even up things a little bit in the second half and started giving us more stuff, did the ref. And I wonder if maybe he's watched that back or someone showed it to him at half time and was like, look, that's a foul.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, that's the game-changing decision that he missed. But
the line-O was there as well, so the two of them.
But, he didn't book Byram for what was an obvious yellow. He didn't book Gruev for what must have been 5 fouls across the game, I'd say.
Totting up, you expected the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Whatever, really. And the offside as well was the other decision, but
the goal, not goal. The Junior Firpo robbed of his moment.
Yeah,
Phil,
because it was very tight. It was one of those ones that you'd have to wait to see him draw lines on. But we were just saying it's fine, isn't it? Yeah. Just make the decision and move on with it.
To the eye, it looked offside, and I'm going, yeah, fine.
Yeah, Firpo no longer even the false 3. He's just going full goal poaching number 9. It's like the ball is loose behind their goalkeeper, who's our closest player. Of course, it's Junior Firpo. Yeah, don't know what he's doing there, but nice one.
But yeah, Ruta was definitely goal side of his man, but then there were people either side, and it's not entirely obvious whether or not where their foot is planted or whether or not they're leaning or sticking their arse out or one of the various things that they kind of draw off sidelines around. But it was, I mean, Norwich got lucky there because they didn't know it was offside, and it was a complete calamity.
I was going to say, Forever Country Boy has mentioned that Rutter was given offside for Firpo's goal, but he didn't actually touch the ball. He was massively interfering, though, wasn't he? He was very active in the play. I mean, I know we saw that one where Marcus Rashford, for those lot, ran towards the ball, but then just decided to leave it, and it was like VAR somehow decided that was fine. But that's those twats, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm sort of all right with the offside. The penalty, less so, because the referee's in a really, really good position for it. The linesman's in a really good position for it, and they both bottled it, as far as I could tell. I don't see how they don't, like say, if you're going to bottle it a bit, at least give a free kick. But anyway.
The other thing that we took note of early doors was Meslier looking a little bit shaky again. It's weird, isn't it, that I think when the pressure comes with Meslier, he just seems to wobble. You can kind of see it in his performance, can't you? And there was that one in particular where he gave a complete hospital pass to Gruev, on the edge of the D because I think his options were shut off going wide. And I think what annoyed me about that was that it felt to me like his body shape was all wrong, which I suppose you put down to footwork. Because if his body had been more open, he would have been able to pop it back across to the right or kick it long. But as it was, he'd set himself up like his body shape was ready to pass it short. So he had no other option. And he ended up playing that total hospital pass. And I don't know if Gruev had asked for it, whether the opportunity for Gruev was there to pass it off to the side. But the decision-making needs to be better there.
Given Gruev's reaction, I don't think he wanted that ball.
No.
I don't know what he said, but it seemed something a bit like, what the fucking hell was that?
Yeah, because they do drop in, I suppose, to create.
Three players on him, weren't there?
Yeah, and they drop in to create space elsewhere as well, that has to be said. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily mean he wanted the ball.
Because there's so many people around him, it's not like an easy one where you can just spray it out one way because there's a fair chance that'll get blocked, even if you can control it. And admittedly, had a bad touch, but even if you can control it, there's a fair chance you're going to get your passing lanes kind of shut out anyway. So, yeah, he kicked a couple straight out of play as well.
It was noticeable in the second half after he'd kicked one out. He got away with it. I think he just dallied on it again a little bit. But Ampadu was completely open. You could see Ampadu sort of screaming at him like, just pass me the ball, like do it quickly, just make your life easier. It's fine. But yeah, it was weird because then there was times when he did have time on the ball and he just hoofed it long. Other times when he didn't have time and he would take a touch or whatever. But yeah, it's weird, Melia, because often in a game he will do one or two of those, but then he kind of just gets out of his system. Whereas today their crowd was getting on him, and it did seem like every time it was a bit like, oh shit, what's going to happen here?
Yeah, and I think as well a bit of mitigation is probably that Meslier is told to play like that. Part of the system is kind of predicated on put your foot on the ball. It's what Brighton have done so well, isn't it? It seems to be like a sort of a trick pulled from the Brighton playbook, which is to put your foot on the ball and then wait for them to come onto you, which then draws them further forward, gives you space to play in behind them. So I think that's what they're doing. It's kind of a high risk strategy to do that. But I just don't think Meslier is necessarily quick enough or perhaps good enough at it yet to allow them to do that.
Or confident enough, maybe.
Yeah.
He's had a bad few weeks, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So
I will say that defensively they looked capable of a fuck up as well, which was quite nice. It looked like when they were trying to play it around the back or were put under pressure, they had errors in them.
Which think they've been drinking?
It could almost look like that, yeah. It's not ideal prep, is it, for a playoff semi? But
yeah, going back to something I was saying earlier, I thought it was nice to see them run out of ideas as they went. Sort of the air just went out of their sails.
I mean, the atmosphere was completely dead by the end, wasn't it? You could tell there was no. It had 0-0 written all over it from about 75 minutes, didn't it? And it felt more or less like playing it out.
Yeah,
it was like from that last 15 minutes of the first half. I made a note just saying it looks like we've got more control, and it was suddenly Archie Gray and Glenn Kamara appeared again because it felt like there'd been 10, 15 minutes where I'd not seen them touch the ball, and you were sort of looking at him like, where actually are they? But then we defended well, and like I say, just kept them out, and then we sort of took control without necessarily looking threatening. Because second half as well, it felt like we were certainly the more dominant team.
Yeah, we kind of grew into it, didn't we? I think in terms of confidence and dominance. And while we were more dominant in that second half, we still didn't really threaten. But then you could tell they were almost making that. It was like a policy decision, wasn't it? I think, given the way that Farke had spoken in the run up to this, and sort of, I think it was Georgie as well did a piece with the official media outlets with the club, a bit of an interview saying, we've been working on tactics. So you suspected that they were going to try and manage the game and shut it down as much as possible.
I was going to say, you're essentially seeing it out to half time, aren't you, at the end of this game, because of just the nature of the two legs and everything. It's one of those where you don't particularly. I think we're used to needing to win league games, aren't we? So there's generally you get a feeling like, oh, there's going to be a push here for the final 15 minutes or whatever. Whereas today it was more like, no.
It was sunny as well, so you're like,
fine. You're back to your heat.
Bit warm, bit tiring, isn't it? Yeah.
Down south too, innit?
Although Georgie did say in his interview in the run up to this that he was happy that it was a bit warmer. The weather will be a bit warmer.
God, what is Georgie all about? It's just like, so if today was the only time you'd ever seen him on a football pitch, it was a bit like seeing Habibu back. He's someone that can't do like basic stuff.
The bounce just bouncing off him. Sorry, the ball just bouncing off him.
Bounce balling off him.
Yeah, all that.
But yeah, the swing and a miss, and just some of the attempts to control it and stuff. You're like, what is this? But we know he's had moments this year where he's looked amazing. So you can kind of, because you've seen the good stuff, you know what he's trying to do. But God, it was a long way off working today.
Yeah. Oh, bless him.
I know.
He seems like a very fragile, and again, Farke touched on it in the run up to this, a very fragile character in terms of his confidence. And you saw it, I think, maybe that's what old pint of wine Sam was getting at towards the end of last year, like not playing him and not chucking him in at the deep end. Like he's still a young man, isn't he? And I think when he's ready to express himself, like we saw in the early part of the season when the pressure was off, he's far better at all that stuff. And now as the season's kind of got to its climax, that he's it's not quite working for him, so he's not trying stuff quite as much, or the ball seems to just bounce off him, or he loses moments of concentration, that you get the swing and the miss and stuff. I don't know. How do you explain it?
Don't know.
How do you explain it?
It's the simple version of it. I've no idea.
What did you make of the subs when they came, protecting, I presume, Nonto was on a yellow card at that point, and taking Georgie off and putting Pirou on?
Dan James had a nice little moment, didn't he, doing his Dan James thing, chasing someone down in the corner, won it, crossed it, no one there.
It's just nice to see that he could still run. I mean, the fact Anthony came on first, you were a bit like, ooh, how fit is actually Dan James here? But the fact he looks good when he came on, caused his problems, and that's another promising thing for the second leg if he can play a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I think they were obvious subs, weren't they? There was not any... sometimes you kind of go, I don't think he's done the right thing there, but actually...
It was always going to be like for like, keep the structure, don't concede.
And we were saying during the game, like Nonto, he constantly looks like he's got a red card in him, doesn't he? Because he does moan a lot and he's prone to little hissy fits and stuff. But I mean, he had that and got his yellow for it today, didn't he? With applauding the ref, which I can see his frustration, because I can't even remember the tackle he did, but it was something fairly weak.
They were going for a header, weren't they? And they both, like, he just fell over.
He bounced off him, didn't he?
That was it, yeah. And given the one that the ref had not given, like 20 minutes earlier or whatever, you can see how he gets kind of frustrated by it. But you're probably better not, aren't you? You can't speak to referees like they're normal human beings.
Again, young team, isn't it? I mean, I'm going all David O'Leary now, but they are a very young team. There's very little sort of in terms of like what wise heads in that squad.
Yeah, we were saying that actually, weren't we? With the team changes, that we've basically been. He seems like he's been stubbornly not playing Joseph because Piro's the more senior player, and then today he's switching out for the youngest player in the entire squad. So, well. But I thought it was. I didn't think it was better. Whether or not we stick with it on Thursday will be interesting to see.
I won't be surprised to see him sort of start with it on Thursday. Which he's got to be careful of, because if the crowd starts to get nervous with it, then it could sort of the atmosphere could flip over.
Yeah,
and what you don't want, you want that kind of rollicking, barnstorming atmosphere on Thursday, don't you? You don't want that nervous, or do we? I don't know. Because the rollicking, barnstorming atmosphere is what's killed these players before.
Now, that was my worry, though, if we were to lose today, is that it would take Road on to pass the ball back to Melier once on Thursday, and the crowd would fucking lose their mind. So at least today, it was a calm performance, and by all accounts, the AOA end gave him a big ovation at the end. So fingers crossed, everyone is a little bit calm. Yeah, and they can see what we're trying to do now as well a little bit. And
all this calm chat, I appreciate it's going to look ludicrous after Thursday when it's been like a 5-4 defeat or something. And
but it was the palate cleanse, wasn't it? It was that.
Yeah, and it felt like a return to. We're just happy to, I guess more so because it's two legs, but we're happy to just be solid and, I guess, gamble on one of our good players doing something good eventually, which puts us in the lead.
Yeah. And you can take those extra chances in that second leg, can't you?
Yeah, and if we need to, then we'll push on. But until then, it will kind of keep them contained. Because Norwich were a bit similar in the home game, weren't they? In that they had some fairly long stints of possession, but in terms of actual chances created, there's not been a lot, has there, across the last two games. I know the away game earlier in the season, they obviously took a 2-goal lead in that, but the last two games, I think I won't be surprised if their XG is like under 1 across both of them. So. It seemed quite managed.
Yeah.
Which I'm all right with for now.
Yeah. Which I think after the last couple of weeks and everybody losing their minds was probably not the best outcome, because a win obviously is better than that, but is a fairly optimal outcome, I would have said.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What odds would Michael give us for getting promoted after that? Asks Johnny Hayes Jazz.
I've just seen that coming up on the screen. I'm wondering what the odds actually are for us to now go through to qualify. There's no odds available yet. Well, we will definitely be favourites to qualify now, won't we?
Yeah, 15 quid on Norwich to win the second leg at 6-1. You can get.
You need to be careful with that, just because if it could be a draw and then we go out on extra time.
Right.
You don't want to lose your money, and
that doesn't
you
count,
need to get the money on to qualify.
You'll be chasing your losses after today, won't you?
Yeah, I did have a tenner on them today.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
What would you have won?
30 quid.
Right. That's not bad odds, is it? I suppose was that 2-1?
They were at home, so it was a fair chance. But no, I'm quite pleased with a 0-0. We've not had many 0-0s this year, have we?
No.
I don't feel like that one. We had a home one, didn't we? Sunderland. Was that 0-0? It was, wasn't it? That was recent. Yeah,
maybe
that was 0-0.
we could do a Huddersfield and go up without scoring a goal in the playoffs.
I'll take it. I'll absolutely take it.
That means penalties, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we're not winning. We're not winning that. Let's face it. We're not winning a penalty shootout.
You don't know that.
Well, does it feel like we would?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very Leedsy, does it? But fine. It might need, if it's anything like today, it might need to go to penalties because it didn't feel like either team would have scored there. If we'd have played for another hour or so, it would have probably still been 0-0.
Nobody wanted to lose that, did they? Nobody wanted to lose it. I'm just going to dive through the comments. Wagner's saying, absolutely fine with the performance. Both sides cancelled each other out. All cards are still on the table. He feels like Norwich kept our attacking threats quiet. Crowd was terrific. Not always an advantage to play the second leg at home. Expectation is great. I'm fine with it.
Yep. Well, look at our record to note it is not an advantage to play the second leg at home. Millwall and Derby were both that, weren't they? And look how they went.
Interesting.
I'm lucky.
I was going to say interesting here that Wagner's sort of followed up by saying because he won the playoffs via that shootout, as I was mentioning before. I know penalties can play a part. Every minute more we play at Ellen Road is in our favour. Yeah. So it makes you wonder what the approach will be like for the second leg.
It's just that it's the standard underdog method, isn't it? You ideally want it down to the smallest amount of time possible to decide a game. Yeah, to make it. You'd be quite happy at the start of a 2-legged playoff to go, just give us 0-0 with 5 minutes to go, and we'll see where that takes us. Yeah. Whereas, I guess it's now very much in our court to do something and make sure that doesn't become an issue, that they can't just try to nick it in the last few minutes with a set piece.
Yes. I imagine, Farke's comments haven't come through yet. I haven't seen them if they have. But you imagine he's going to stay pretty much the same, isn't it? Yeah. The important thing is not to lose, not to concede, so on and so forth. So
I don't think it's a day for anyone shitting in anyone's dressing room just yet, is it? No.
Right. Right. It's amazing that your mind went there, Michael.
That was the Derby. That was the Lampard special, wasn't it?
Yes, special. Wow. Anything else to add then? Or does that kind of wrap it all up? I don't know.
It was good that Sky had such a terrible game for the neutrals. When they're really big up the playoffs, don't they? As being like, these are the best games in the world, and then the people turn on for that. And they're like, it's not been any shots.
Dan has answered your query that we've only had 3 0-0s all season.
Oh, there you go.
So that's good. Let's not have another 0-0 on Thursday. Just get it done one way or another. It's fine. But let's embrace it. Like I said, running into this, if we can now start to think of it as an opportunity rather than something to be absolutely terrified of, why not? Ride the wave, baby.
You see, I said, even the idea of a trip to Wembley makes me feel tired. That's what I said.
What I will say is that I'd much rather be there in person for the second leg than if this had been the second leg today and I had to watch it on telly. Not as much fun.
No, and at least Don Goodman's not going to be there on Thursday for me.
Sat next to you. He's got a ticket in the car.
Someone's piped him into my ear. It's funny, we were saying during the game, weren't we, how the Ipswich fans and players have really taken against Goodman because they think he's been biased against them. It's just like that for everyone. He's just a complete drain of everyone's life.
Yeah, he's just bad at his job. What was it? I think it might be the second leg that might be decisive. Yeah, so it works.
Hell of a call, Don. And there was that one where, for some reason, the ref's given a foul here, and there is that reason when he saw the replay.
Because it's a foul.
And I know he's just thinking out loud as he's doing his job, but still.
It reflected the game that in the second half they were chatting about Snooker Loopy and Athletic Bilbao, which was fair enough.
And we were talking about Big Break with Jim Davidson and John Virgo for a time, weren't we?
Yeah, which one?
And you were saying you think it's bad that Jim Davidson's not on TV more, weren't you?
Well, it was you was saying that you really liked his comedy.
You said he's been silenced.
Oh dear. Right, shall we wrap it up there then, or should we wait for Farke's comments to come through?
No, we know what else.
He's not going to say how interesting.
I'll tell you what, we'll catch up with Phil on that actually. Sort of in this void between now and Thursday, whatever. I still don't have a clue what we're going to do this week because it's Sunday, Thursday, which is just not a thing that happens, is it?
It is unusual.
But we'll
Europa League, that's what that is.
Yeah, it is. We'll get together and have a chat with Phil and see what Phil made of the comments from the old press room. So, yeah, any final thoughts? Overall,
it's all right.
Quietly happy, fine with that.
See you Thursday.
Fine, let's just not Leeds it in.
See you Thursday and Griefcast Part 2?
Can't wait.
Let's hope not. See you in a bit.
The Match Ball.